Welcome to Everything Is For You podcast, where we explore the full spectrum of personal and professional growth, finding our purpose, and the art of being truly present. Today, I'm flying solo, and I'm going to talk about an experience that happened to me the other day that triggered a memory of something terrifying that happened to me in my 30s. Which brings me to want to talk about humanity and the stories that we tell ourselves. Today's podcast will be shorter than the other ones because I just really wanted to hit upon this humanity feeling that I was having. And I thought it would be hopefully something that resonates with you guys. Life has a way of rewriting our stories, right? When they happen to us, they feel so huge. They're either dramatic or happy, sad, or whatever the story is at the time. But after time goes by, these stories become memories, and then those memories change. They get smaller, they get bigger, or sometimes they just don't seem as important. I have two stories to share, and one happened to me the other day, and that experience triggered something that happened to me in my 30s. And that what happened to me in my 30s really affected my outlook on humanity at that time in my life. I was living in Sherman Oaks here in LA, and I was in an apartment style area, really cute apartments. It was a safe neighborhood. You could walk to the corner bar, you could walk to the market. It was mostly apartments, not a lot of houses. And everything was, right in the area. I lived in a little 16 or 10 unit building, and across the street from me was a large building, probably a couple hundred apartments. And then there was all these like little duplexes and bigger apartment buildings. It was all mixed and matched and super sweet. And you wave to your neighbor as you're walking your dog. So anyways, my bedroom window was facing the main street of Moore Park. It wasn't it's not like a main street. It's kind of a small main street. It's busier than a cul-de-sac or something, but it's still not a very busy street. And my bedroom was facing that. It was 4 a.m. and I woke up to a woman screaming. And I hear this, help me, oh my God, help. And I hear like dog fight. And I jump out of bed and I get my shoes on and I grab my dog, Shiva, at the time. Shiva was kind of a shepherdy, dingo looking dog. She's probably about 65 pounds. And so I get a leash on, I get my shoes on, and I run out to the street behind me, Moore Park. And I see this woman and her German Shepherd and a pit bull just like ripping this German Shepherd to shreds, and her like biting both of them. And I run across the street and I tie up my dog Shiva because I don't want her to get into the mix. And I go and I help this woman break this fight up. And there was a pickup truck parked right there. I don't know, it was either on the street or this little parking lot. And I pulled the pit bull off of the dog and I grabbed him and I started being like the pack leader, like sit down. And I picked him up and I threw him in the back of this pickup truck. And I said, you sit down. And the dog did. He sat down and I said, you stay there. And the dog did. And at this time, I saw that everything was happening so fast. This dog, this German Shepherd, the whole neck was just torn apart. She was covered in blood. I don't know how badly she got bit, but there was a 24-hour emergency vet very, very close by. And so we quickly exchanged phone numbers. This is, 20 years ago. So our cell phones were very different than they are now. And we quickly exchanged number. And I see this guy walking back and forth across the street with a hoodie. And I think it's weird, but we are so like, our energy is so high. And she's like, I got to get my dog to the vet. And he's really bad. And I said, of course, I'll call the police and animal control. And, in the meantime, while we were breaking up this fight, we were screaming at the top of our lungs, like, help, help. And I'm like trying to get in. I'm like, ah! I'm screaming, no, no. And my dog, you have to remember, my dog Shiva is tied up. and she is literally barking the entire time, ruff, 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 like loud. And nobody came. Nobody came out. I was the only one that came out. So anyways, she leaves, and we exchange numbers. She leaves, and I call the police. The police transfer me to the animal control, and animal control said, okay, I'm on my way. I will be there in like 20 or 30 minutes. And I was like, okay, hurry, I'm by myself, this is terrifying, blah blah blah. And they're like, okay. So this guy across the street with the hoodie, he kind of walks towards me, and he's like, hey, oh my God, are you guys okay? And I was like, no. And he's like, all of a sudden that dog's tail started wagging. He jumps, grabs the dog, and gets the dog out of the truck so fast and runs. And I was like, you mother. I was just like, oh my God, because I wanted that dog to be accountable, and or at least I don't know what I wanted. Everything was so shock, and how do you hold a dog accountable? But um that it was just such a terrifying moment. So anyways, I go back. I was so shooken and afraid and like depressed, and I couldn't believe that nobody else came to help us, because like I said, this is a neighborhood of a lot of apartment buildings, and people heard because the dog's barking the whole time. And I just was like, I lost so much faith in humanity at that time, and I was really depressed. So a couple days go by. I was really depressed, and I tried to call this woman, and her number was disconnected. And so a week goes by, and then I get a phone call, and it was her. And she was like, oh my God, your phone was disconnected. And I'm like, that is so weird, because my phone wasn't disconnected. Which I still have zero idea why that happened. But she said that she got the dog to the vet, and he's going to survive. It's going to take him several months to recover. And that she was so grateful to me because I gave her a new look on humanity, and faith in humanity. And I was like, whoa, I'm having the opposite feeling. I lost all faith in humanity. Anyways, we had this really beautiful conversation, and then we said we were going to go to lunch. So we hang up, and then the next time I call her, her phone's disconnected, and we never spoke again, which is so weird, that whole connection. And I still don't truly understand what that connection is. Now, I went through depression probably for a couple weeks of like really hardcore, like crying, and I was just my faith in humanity was gone in a lot of ways. And now, cut to 20 years later, I'm walking down the street just the other day with my dog, my new dog Paco, and I live in the hills in Los Angeles, and there's a lot of coyotes. And I've been like very present in my walks, and like being very aware that there's coyotes there. He was peeing on this grass, and I'm standing in front of my neighbor's house on a corner, and I say hi to this neighbor a lot. And a coyote like came out of his front yard right behind me, like it almost brushed my leg, and came after my dog. Now, it didn't feel like super aggressive, but still, he's a coyote going towards my dog. So I get really big, and I go, get out of here. And I'm like, get out, and stomping my feet. And he runs back, and then he starts coming back towards us again. I mean, he's like 2 feet away. And I'm like, get out of here. And she runs up the street, and I see this coyote a lot, and I'm like, get out. And I keep kind of chasing her up the street. So finally she runs away. Now, this is like 6 a.m. in the morning, and my neighbor opens the window. I hear him open. I go, oh my God, I'm so sorry. It was a coyote. He goes, no, I know. Are you okay? Are you and Paco okay? Are you guys okay? And I'm like, yes, thank you so much. He's like, are you sure? And I'm like, yes, we're okay. It was just scary. And he's like, okay. And so because I was looked after at that moment, it made me remember this other moment when I was in my 30s. And there's there's a power of perception here, right? Or perspective, excuse me. There's a power of perspective. And there was a phrase by, I hope I'm saying this right, Ananias Nin. Ananis Nin, that we see the world not as it is, but as we are. Right. And so, from my perspective, the silence and the inaction of others felt like an abandonment, making me lose hope in humanity. But from her perspective, my selfless action was that shining light to her. It was a shining light of compassion and restoring her faith in humanity. So it gets into like dual realities, like goodness and darkness coexist in the world, right? And when I talk about darkness, I don't want to always talk about darkness as the maybe the negative, or the not so good part, because darkness is also our friend and can be a wonderful tool of healing. But in um this particular story, it's goodness and darkness, right? So it's dual realities that coexist in the world, and this experience shows how both light and shadow exist. They coexist. While others didn't come and help me, but my courage did shine brightly through the darkness for her. And the tension between those two opposites is central to spiritual teachings, right? So there's a saying from the Persian poet, I hope I'm saying this name right, Hafiz. I wish I could show you, when you are lonely or in darkness, the astonishing light of your own being. And I thought that was just so beautiful. And I really think it resonates in this story. And then there's another saying from Gandhi: you may never know what results come from your actions, but if you do nothing, there will be no results. I'm going to say that again. You may never know what results come from your actions, but if you do nothing, there will be no results, right? And so I'm just saying, like, we need, like, I think it's really important for all of us to kind of like, do our best to act with kindness, do our best to show up and be supportive to strangers, because to people we know, to all of our friends, our loved ones. But we are all one, right? And we're all human, dealing with our own things. And if we could just spread a little bit of light into each person's life that we come across, whether that's the clerk at the grocery store and we say, thank you so much, I really appreciate you, those little things go such a long way. Final wisdom to reflect on this and accepting dual realities. This story is a point, is a reminder of duality, right? The world is both beautiful and flawed, and humanity is capable of both selfishness and extraordinary kindness. So both truths can totally coexist. What matters most is the choice that we make in the moment. And that's what I was saying, is like making those choices in the moment. There's another saying from neurologist and psychologist Viktor Frankl. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves. It's an interesting concept. You may not be able to change the inaction of others, but by showing courage and love in a way that changes another's person, that could change their life forever. So I'm just saying, let's do our best to show up. Let's do our best to show up. So another thing I want to talk about today is the stories that we tell ourselves, right? And I talk about stories a lot in this podcast. I've been reflecting a lot lately on the stories that we tell ourselves. And, those inner narratives that shape how we see ourselves and our lives. Some stories are empowering, but others can get us stuck, and some reveal pain, or we're holding on to an identity that no longer fits us. And I believe it's so important to take an honest look at that story that we're living in right now and ask, is it still serving me? Is the story that I have today still serving me? And I recently came to the conclusion that the story I have been expressing for the last 2 years is no longer serving me, and it's time to change my story again. So I'm building a new chapter again, and I'm changing my story again. For the last 2 years, my story has been one of healing, right? It started with my painful divorce. I quit my job. I walked away from a life that I worked really hard to build, but it was no longer feeling aligned and with who I was becoming. I was grieving, and not just from the loss of my marriage, but from the loss of who I thought I was. So I made healing my full time job. Every single day, I woke up with one goal: to heal, to sit in grief and to heal, to feel it fully and to learn how to release it. And let me tell you, it was the hardest but most important work I've done. And I don't know, you know, if I felt it all. I know I cried probably for a year and a half straight, and I know that I was so cried out by the time I stopped crying that I didn't have any more to cry, and I didn't feel as much. But then grief would come back, and sometimes it would be anger, sometimes it would be sadness. Didn't cry a lot after that, but I felt these things. And then sometimes I didn't feel them, and that was okay too. Sometimes I just rested. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey. So, traveling, making life changes, starting this podcast, those are all pieces of that healing journey and this healing journey. But recently, I realized something powerful. The story has changed, and it's no longer about my divorce or my ex-wife. That chapter served me very, very well. And it taught me so much about resilience, love, and letting go. But I've moved on from it, right? My story is now about growth and evolving. It's about me. It's about discovering what makes me feel good, what aligns with who I am today, and what I want to create this next chapter to be. And I'm still not 100% sure of what that is. And that's okay. And that's totally okay. I do know that I am in the process of making conscious content that sparks my passions of giving positive messages in this world, or uncovering, um, you know, disservices to people that maybe believe in something that has got corruption behind it. I want to tell stories that matter. And that is what I know. That's what I know, that when I wake up in the morning, that lights me up. And I also want to be of service to others. And I still don't know exactly what that looks like. And that's okay too. It's the first time in my life that I don't have everything planned out, mapped out, knowing what I'm going to do. And that's okay. Because I know that if I follow my authentic heart and I follow what feels good inside, and I treat myself and others with love, thoughtfulness, and respect, everything else will be aligned. But I am going to pay attention to when my story changes, because I am not the same person that I was when I was married. I'm a very, very different person. And I'm not the person that I was going through that painful divorce. I'm a very different person. And I'm a very different person of who I was 3 months ago. And I love that. And I love this evolving, So I'm just bringing this awareness, because I think it's a good thing to think about. Living in the present for the first time in my life, like I said, I don't know exactly what to do. And that's so okay. And there's some freedom in not having it all figured out, right? Right now, I'm focusing on being very present, and I'm practicing gratitude for where I am, even if things still feel like they're, not in the places that I want them to, or I'm working towards being. Life is a process, and it's messy, it's unpredictable, and it's full of surprises. But I've learned to lean into that, to trust that not knowing is part of the magic. And I think that's really cool. And the new story I'm creating, the part that excites me is stepping into that creative space, developing docu-series that matter, and developing, you know, um, developing content that has to do with, change makers and extraordinary leaders in the world, that, the next generation that is going to be some of the best folks because of the way that they've been brought up with love from our generation, different than how we were brought up. So there's a lot of things I'm really excited about. I've planted the seeds, and now I'm going to start watching those seeds grow, and I'm going to keep watering them. As I move forward, I realized, staying stuck in old stories is a disservice to ourselves. So, like, let's pay attention. Let's pay attention. Let's not do a disservice to ourselves. Yes, the story of my divorce was vital. It helped me. It healed me. It taught me invaluable lessons. It shaped me in who I am today. But again, that story is not what defines me anymore. And I've made peace with that, and I've let that go. Now I'm embracing the newness of this chapter. And this chapter is about me. And it's about creating, exploring, and being fully present to best of my ability, because I'm still a work in progress, like we all are. So here's some closing reflections. I want to leave you with this thought. Our stories aren't static. They're living, breathing, evolving parts of who we are. That is our responsibility to check in with ourselves and to ask whether the story we're living in is serving us or whether it's time to write a new one. And I love that it's that easy to write a new one. So healing, growth, creativity, these aren't destinations. They're processes, and they're beautiful in their own imperfect way. So today I invite you to reflect on your own story. What chapter are you in right now? Is it a story that uplifts you? Are you holding on to an old version of yourself that no longer serves you? And if you're ready for a new chapter, what chapter are you going to write next? That's what I want to know. Please, leave comments, reach out to me. There's an email address in the show notes. And please, follow us, like us. Those little things that you can do for free, like following us or giving us a comment or liking us or going to my Instagram page of Everything Is For You podcast, or the Facebook page, or even my page. All of those little things are very, very helpful. They're free for you, and they help this kind of project keep growing. So I have one last quote I would like to leave you with, which is Mother Teresa. Not all of us can do great things, but we can do small things with great love. I love that. I'm going to say it one more time. Not all of us can do great things, but we can do small things with great love. And with that, my beautiful friends, I hope some of this resonated with you. And I just sending you so much love, and thank you for all the support. It means the world to me. And I will be on the next one in a few weeks. All right. Mwah.